He has the money and energetic supporters, but can Ron Paul knock off frontrunner Mitt Romney? We'll ask the congressman about his strategy for winning the nomination. Joining us now is the candidate who finished in the top tier in Iowa and is a strong second now in most polls heading into Tuesday's primary here in New Hampshire. Congressman Ron Paul, welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you.
Let's start with your third place finish in Iowa this week. According to the entrance polls, you took 40% of voters who describe themselves as moderate or liberal, but only 14% of Republicans. Question, how can you win the GOP nomination if Republicans don't vote for you?
Well, you know, there was another analysis of that. There was, nearly half or 47% of the independent, but another number was close to 40-some that were conservative. So maybe they're independents or something like that. But no, the message has to be across the board. We have to get Republican votes. But right now, I'm very strong on those individuals who want to come into the party. The young people, they are wanting to come in, and I do very, very well there. And the independents, a good thing. So, but I still have to, attract those votes who consider themselves conventional Republicans. But, I talk about, the wisdom of the Republican Party. They talk about limited government and balanced budgets. And because, I have to stand up against the party, some people don't quite figure it out. But I really speak the language of the Republicans who think that we should have limited government.
Here in New Hampshire, roughly 40% of the primary vote is expected to be so-called undeclared voters, not registered either as Republicans or Democrats. Are you counting on the undeclared voters here in New Hampshire?
Oh, absolutely. And we solicit them. And, of course, we go to the Republicans as well. But the whole spirit up here, falls into place for what I've been talking about for a long time, very limited government economically and with personal liberties. And so we work very hard with the independents, but I think we're doing quite well with the Republicans, too.
Your campaign manager says that your focus is to win 5 caucus states like Minnesota and Maine and Missouri, because if you take 5 states, you can then get your name placed in nomination at the Republican convention in Tampa in August. Question, that sounds more like a strategy to make a primetime speech at the convention or to affect the party platform than it does to win the nomination.
Of course, that's the fallback. If we don't pull it off and we're not in first place, yes, that would be a good goal. And people ask me why I run, and I run to win, and I have won a lot, but we also want to help direct the party and the country in a certain way. So that would be a very, very positive strategy to have an influence in the party, so we certainly would look at that as well.
Well, let me ask you about that, because, there's a big deal made about the platform at the convention, and then, frankly, I don't have to tell you, people ignore it. Yeah. Why is it important to you to get your views, anti-war views, anti-government views, into the party platform?
Oh, I think so. And you're right. But that's also the reason the American people are so sick and tired of the promises by Republican and Democrat leadership. They make these promises, they have platforms, and they go and they don't do anything about it. The Democrats act like Republicans act like Democrats. They keep spending the money. They don't shrink the size of the government. They don't protect our privacy.
So then why do you care what's in the platform?
Well, I guess I'm an optimist, that, you keep plugging away. I'd have to be an optimist because I've been plugging away for a long time. My views I've expressed since the 70s, but all of a sudden they're getting a lot of attention, a lot of popularity. The country, out of desperation now, is looking at a constitutional approach. In foreign policy, they're tired of the war. Just think how many people now are looking at monetary policy, and that only happens about every 100 years where people get real concerned about monetary policy, and everybody knows we're up against the wall on the spending, and the debt is a problem, and they know that I'm very aggressive on dealing with the deficits that we have.
In your speech in Iowa Tuesday night, I think it's fair to say that you made a statement that no candidate running for president of the United States has ever made before. Let's watch.
I'm waiting for the day when we can say we're all Austrians now.
I think you'd agree. No presidential candidates ever said it. You were advancing in something you believe very deeply in the Austrian School of Economics, which opposes the idea of government intervention in times of downturn, of crisis, and says, basically believes in the value of what's called creative destruction. Is that what President Paul would do? creative destruction?
Well, that is the answer to our problems. I mean, if you want economic growth, you have to listen to that. But, you know, obviously that statement comes from the fact that I didn't have very good handlers, or I didn't listen, because I'm sure a political handler, what are you talking about? Only your supporters are going to know what you're talking about. But a lot more people know about the young people on campuses. No, what you want is corrections, and we're talking about a correction in 1 year instead of 5 or 10 or 15 years. For instance, Japan's been correcting for 20 years, and they haven't cleansed their system. They haven't gotten rid of the malinvestment and the bad debt. We did it in the 30s, and we're trying real hard. We predicted these problems and said the malinvestment distortions come from the Federal Reserve having artificially low interest rates.
So you're saying don't intervene, just if it's going bad, let it go bad.
Quickly. In 1921, that's exactly what we did, and the GDP went down like 15%, and debt was liquidated. Nobody even remembers it. So now when you prolong it and you prop things up, like in the Depression, we did things like, well, the farmers didn't have enough money, so we needed more money for crops, so we, plowed the crops under when people were starving. That's the silliness of government intervention. So you need to get rid of the mistakes. It's sort of like you need the operation, you need the surgical removal of the tumor, and the tumor is the mistakes and the debt. And this is why I make bold proposals to cut $1 trillion out of the budget.
Last week, you were asked about and defended your criticism of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which ended discrimination in public accommodation. Back in 2004, you said this, and we're going to put it up on the screen: the rights of all private property owners, even those whose actions decent people find abhorrent, must be respected if we are to maintain a free society. Are you saying that the owner of a restaurant, a private restaurant, should be able to decide whether or not to serve black people?
What I'm saying is I'm challenging individuals to say, what is private property? Is your house private property, but your restaurant is not? How do you separate the two? One is good and one isn't. But yes, we believe that the laws, the bad laws, the Jim Crow laws, where government forces integration, they're evil and monstrous.
Forces segregation.
And so we have to get rid of those. But you don't throw away all private property, because we're convinced that your civil liberties are protected by your property. Yeah, you have a right of free speech and you have a TV station, but it's this property. Nobody can walk into the studio and exert themselves. The bedroom, wait, let me finish if I could. The bedroom is private property, so if you want to protect sexual preferences, you protect the property of the bedroom. So we can't separate civil liberties from property.
But specifically, are you saying that if I own a restaurant and I don't want to serve an African American, I should be able to?
Well, you know what they've done. The whole thing is that's ancient history. That's been settled a long time ago, and nobody's going to go back to it. It would be the most devastating thing and stupid for people to do that. They'd lose their business. So that's
but would
really
it be wrong?
It would be wrong. It would be morally wrong. But I'm not going to throw out because I have such high regard for property rights. But what the whole thing is sometimes these things don't work out as well. What do? They privatized a lot of things. You know, they had private clubs and things like that. I think you have to change people's hearts and minds, but you have to understand property, and property protects our religious beliefs, our personal beliefs, our civil liberties. But if you throw that all out, just think of how often government was the culprit, whether it was slavery, the Jim Crow laws, and segregation in the military. This was all government, so we want that out of the way.
But it sounds like ideally, and I'm not saying you would do it because you're also practical, it sounds like ideally you would like to return back a century to the days when government didn't intervene, when there was an economic problem, didn't soften the blow, and quite frankly didn't enforce racial integration.
No, we think of ourselves as advancing the cause of liberty in a modern state, because if you go back 100 years, you're going to go back to Jim Crow laws and slavery. So no, we don't want to go back. Even the gold standard, I don't want to go back to an imperfect gold standard. We want to build on the freedoms that our founders gave us and the tremendous success we've had in the prosperity. Now we're losing this. We're losing our liberties with the National Defense Authorization Act and the arrest of American citizens. I mean, we're going backwards on this, and all civil liberty is going to be attacked if we don't reverse this.
Finally, you have recently been leaving the door open again to running as an independent if you don't win the Republican nomination. I want to take you back, though, to a conversation that you and I had 2 months ago here on Fox News Sunday. Let's watch.
I have no intention of doing that. That doesn't make any sense to me to even think about it, let alone plan to do that.
Because?
Because I don't want to do it.
You like that answer?
Yeah, I love the answer then. I love it now. But so my question is, where are you? What you're saying now, which is I'll decide later, or I have no intention of doing it because I don't want to do it?
I'd give the same answer. I don't want to do it. I have no plans on doing it. I want to see how well I do. You know, I'm doing pretty darn well.
I know you are.
Getting through.
But are you leaving the door open, or you're not leaving the door open?
I'm not an absolutist. When I left Congress, I had no intention whatsoever to going back. But 12, 15 years, if I said I will never return to Congress, they would have closed the door. But I have no plans. Everybody knows I have no intention, of doing that. That would be a bit of a burden. And besides, I don't want to do it.
Congressman Paul, thank you, as always, for coming in and talking with us. Good luck on Tuesday night, and we'll see you down the campaign trail.
Thank you.